Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting of the Carpinteria Valley Water District to order. Can we have the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Bob, can we have a roll call, please?
Director Holcomb?
Here.
Director Johnson?
Present.
Director Roberts?
Here.
Director Balch is absent. Director Van Wingerden?
Yes.
4 present, with Director Balch absent.
Item number 3, public forum. Any person may address the Board of Directors on any matter within his jurisdiction which is not on the agenda. No one. Then we move on to item number 4, approval items. 4A, the minutes of the regular board meeting held on February 28, 2024.
Polly motions for approval.
I have a comment on the minutes. Yeah, I would like to thank staff for correcting the agenda item from last meeting about the Carpinteria Valley Water District investment policy, and to really affirm that that is a draft, because this document that we got last week also said last revised 2/17/24, which was before our meeting. And I think that was probably an in-house, okay, this is our version we're working on now or something. But anyway, that is just a draft. There's been no revision on the investment policy for the district. And they're working on it. And it needs to be updated. Anyway, thank you very much, and I move to approve.
You second.
Second.
Yeah. Very good. So we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? The roll call, please.
Director Holcomb? Yes. Director Johnson?
Aye.
Director Roberts?
Abstain.
Director Balch is absent. Director Van Wingerden?
Yes.
Motion carries 3-1-1, I think.
Yeah. Okay, then we move on to item number 5, unfinished business, none. Then I'm going to adjourn to the regular meeting of the Carpinteria Groundwater Sustainability Agency. Call the meeting to order. Item number 2, public forum. Any person may address the Board of Directors on any matter within his jurisdiction which is not on the agenda. So Carolyn, oh no, sorry, you're on the other one. Okay.
I guess,
No, we'll wait. You can do now or 5, whatever you want.
yeah, let me do, I guess, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Approval items. 3A, the minutes of the meeting of the board held on February 28, 2024.
I move for approval.
Polly seconds.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? The roll call, please.
Director Holcomb?
Yes.
Director Johnson?
Aye.
Director Roberts?
Abstain.
Director Balch is absent. Director Van Wingerden?
Yes.
Motion carries 3-1-1.
Then we move on to item number 4, unfinished business, none. Then we go to item number 5, 5A, new business. Consider engaging the services of DCSE for GIS services with respect to estimating private groundwater extraction. For action, Bob, you want to?
Yeah, this is returning from the last meeting. We have a proposal from a company called DCSC, and I did ask them what that stands for, and they just said it's the initials of the owners.
Well, thank you. Okay.
They've developed, they're one of several companies have developed an approach using the evapotranspiration from satellite imagery, and so they can basically take the 3 or 4 satellites that fly over every month over Carpinteria, take the photos from those, and then use the infrared band, which gives you some variations of infrared light, and from that they can determine what the ET is on various plants. This is helpful for the GSA because its approach is pretty much a completely different approach. We use an averaging of water uses by crop throughout the district. So, for example, we have parcels that have only a CVWD meter as their irrigation supply, and we know the value, we know the amount of water they use in a given year. We can measure the acreage of the crops that they have on the parcel, and in many cases, it's a single crop. And so where it's a single crop, we can take that parcel, its acreage, and its water use, and then come up with what we call an application rate for that crop. And so we do that across the basin for all the parcels that we know just have meters, and we come up with an average application rate for, let's say, avocados. Then we apply it to all of the parcels, and we come up with a deficit of water that would be needed to irrigate the crops across the basin. Some parcels have wells and meters. There's a few that just have wells, and so a lot have wells and meters, but they don't use the meter except in emergencies. And so we can kind of generate what would be a projected groundwater extraction for a period.
Excuse me, can I just clarify, when you say meter, you don't mean a private
No.
well
No,
meter, you mean the
CVWD,
district
right.
delivery of water through a meter?
A
Okay,
water
thank you.
meter, yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that's the data source we have for metering for various crops. That method has limitations. Averaging it, as an example, is a limitation because people have different practices. They have different locations where there are microclimates, different angles on the slope that they might be on, or in the valley. So what the ET approach offers is sort of a different approach where it just looks at the plant ET and it uses that as a basis for estimating. And so what we want to do is we want to have these two methods working together to kind of fine tune what we really think is being extracted or being used water-wise on a given parcel. The primary purpose of this right now is for the fee, that we are charging the various pumpers in the basin for the GSA. Ultimately, what we'd like to do is use the same data, to generate annual groundwater use projections so that we know, are we using more groundwater than our sustainable yield, for example. So there are other purposes. It's not just for fee generation. As I said, different plants have different ETs, so that this ET method will kind of solve that problem, as well as different locations have microclimates, so it causes, some are hotter, some are cooler, some are shaded, some are sunny, so all of those variations cause different ET, and so and plant need for water. So this method helps to resolve all of those variables. One thing that the ET method is not meant to do, it's not meant to replace the current method that we use. We have a long history with that current method. And so, being kind of consistent with that method is helpful because then we have back to 1985. And we've been doing that method since 1985. We have data going back that's consistent. But this will help, make sure to have a double check on those results in that method. It's also not meant to replace meters. A number of folks at the last meeting indicated that they felt that meters were a better solution. I don't disagree. Meters are going to be more accurate, although they have their own set of challenges. But for now, we don't have meters, and so we can't use that method for this year or probably even next year. And we're kind of in this trajectory where the last 2 years we've just used acreage of parcels, and we got feedback that no, it should be the pumping value. So we moved towards that. We developed our process, and now we're refining that process with the ET data. And we're going to continue to try to resolve inaccuracies. But, we did hear and we got the message that, yes, we should start looking into meters and see what that will take, how long it will take, how much money it will take. what the challenges are so that we go in, any decisions that we might make in the future about meters with our eyes open. So, you saw this last year, or last meeting. This is just the equation. So these are the knowns, surface water delivery, which we deliver, CVWD delivers through its water meters. Precipitation, we have rain gauges. We have pretty good rain gauges across Carpinteria Valley. So we can get that data, from here. It's, of course, not exact for every location, but we have about 3 or 4 locations where we can collect data. Evapotranspiration is what is being pulled from the photos from the satellite. And then runoff is just assumed to be 0 because we typically don't see people irrigating so much that tailwater is running off of the property into a drain or something. So basically this equation can be used for 2 things. It can be used to figure out, okay, was there a net to the groundwater where percolation or recharge was occurring? So that would happen in a wet year. So in this equation, if you use this equation during a wet year, you're going to see an increase in A is going to be bigger than B. So this is going to be larger than this. And so you would see recharge occurring. Although you'd still be able to, I think, pull out the individual pumping because there are times between rainfall that people are still pumping and plants are still needing water. The other way is when there's not that much rain, which is unfortunately seems to be more of the time than not, would be the net from the groundwater basin. And so, I'm sorry, yeah, that's right. Yeah, so basically that indicates when there's not enough rain and you're basically making it up with groundwater. And so, so this would help us, to determine what the total extraction from the basin is across all parcels, but it also would give us each parcel, whether they're pulling any water or not. We did do a pilot study. I mentioned this last month. We just had a select number of parcels that we looked at, and we had them analyze the photo from 2022, 2 months, and so they came up with this kind of map that shows where the higher and the lower ETs are. So the red is lower, and the dark spots are higher. So green is higher, and so you can kind of see, this aligns pretty well with where the trees are, and there are some that the red spots, for example, are either concrete pads or buildings or something where you wouldn't expect any water. And then in June, you see a lot more evapotranspiration. You can see a really heavy ET happening in these zones here. So the temperature is much higher, the sun's out longer, and so you tend to get this type of pattern. So makes sense, more water used in the summer. So they take this data, they compare it to water delivered from CVWD meters, and then they say, okay, is there a deficit? Or are you taking from the groundwater, or are you basically putting back? So those who are just taking district water water would going into the basin. Those who are pumping could be either way, but most likely they're pumping because there's a deficit. They don't have it, or they're not using enough CVWD water to irrigate their crops. So they do that, and then we come up with a value for each parcel, and then that's what we would use to assess the fee. So I'm happy to answer any questions. The staff recommendation is the same as it was last month. Authorize the executive director to engage DCSC for services for fiscal year 2022, which is the year we're using as the basis for the fee for fiscal year 25, not to exceed $20,000. And that $20,000, there is a $8,000 one-time setup fee, so that won't, if we do it again next year, it'll be $12,000.
Okay, Carolyn, do you want to speak or not?
I mean, require or what costs to install them, or if the district is gonna help subsidize that. I think there's a lot of questions that we all have
Yes.
that, you heard from us last time that, yeah, meters are, I guess we don't wanna be paying for water that maybe we're not really using. And, as you say, all of us, our grounds are different. Some of us are the sandy Loma, others are not. So and some of us are recharging our groundwaters constantly with our open farming, with our land that's not planted. How does that satellite take into account for greenhouses?
Yeah, so the limitation on greenhouses and pastures, it doesn't do anything. It can't do anything because there's no actual plants. So those would be excluded from the study. We'd have to use what we know as the application rate.
So do greenhouses, are they required to have meters if they are using wells?
Currently, no, but that's something that we can look at. So as I said, staff heard the comments last meeting, and so we're going to start looking at the cost of those meters and
Yeah.
things like priority. Probably would make sense to have greenhouses as the first.
Yeah, I think our biggest concern, or I think people here in agriculture, is just we have no idea what these cost implications are going to be. You know, it rose $20 an acre in 1 year. That was quite a bit. That was quite a bit of a chunk, especially when, for us, avocado prices were low last year. So all of a sudden, another raising cost. So I think, as far as growers are concerned, there is a lot of unanswered questions that we're talking about these things. We know we have to do them, but yet we can't seem to get answers. So just, I think, and I know, everything's up in the air. This is something new. I looked at the Santa Barbara County water and was just so surprised that, Santa Barbara or Goleta was not required to do this. And is it only because of the saltwater intrusion that Carpinteria was picked?
No, I'll go through the chair. I don't want to have a conversation outside.
Go for it.
So the prioritization of the basins through Sigma was done in 2015, and basically they had a matrix that they evaluated. But what it boils down to is how critical is the groundwater basin to the area. And so in Santa Barbara's case, they don't really use a lot of groundwater. The city of Santa Barbara has other water supplies that they typically will use. They use a little bit of groundwater. Goleta's case, they're an adjudicated basin, so any adjudicated basin was just taken out of Sigma because it's already under court receivership or court. So, there was a lawsuit. They resolved it through the legal system. But Carpinteria, because of the dependence on the groundwater basin here, they said, this is a high priority basin because it's not only for agriculture, it's also for potable water supply because the water district relies on it. So it's not that we did something wrong. It's that the state recognizes it's an important resource.
We deal with them with other water
Yeah.
issues. But so I just, I'm speaking and saying that I think there are a lot of unknowns for everyone in the agriculture valley in Carpinteria. And so for as long as I know that people have been pumping the water out of the ground, all of a sudden, we're going to be paying for fees and things like that.
Yeah, and I'll just remind you or everybody that has the question. So, the history of the GSA is in 2020, we were required in 2019 to form a GSA. And so in 2020, we formed the GSA. We had a budget of, in 2020, we didn't do a lot, but we had a budget of 50 grand or something like that. We borrowed that money from the water district. And then in 21, we did the same thing. And so 22 was the first year we said, this thing needs to be self-sufficient and be funded by the users of the basin, including the water district. And so we our first stab was saying, okay, by acreage of parcel, that's kind of a fair way of representing, the beneficiaries of the basin on a spatial basis. And we got lots of feedback that, no, that's not fair, we shouldn't do it that way.
Yeah.
We should do it by pumping value. So we said, okay, well, we don't have meters, so we've been estimating pumping for many years, so we'll just continue to do that. We'll use that as the basis. We did refine it this year by sending out letters to all of the owners and saying, hey, does this seem right to you? Because this is what we calculated. This DCSC is just another layer on top of that to help us better understand where the pumping is happening. Again, it's not meant to exclude the option of a meter on each well. That's something I think needs discussion. If I had a crystal ball or a magic wand, I'd just say everyone has a meter and we're good to go. But unfortunately, it costs money. It takes time. So.
Yeah, okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Polly, you want to?
Yeah, you'd confirm what my question was, which is that this is pretty much a stopgap, and it's an extra layer. It doesn't preclude us from studying the meters, which we talked about last week.
Yes.
So, good, thanks. I support it.
Matt?
So I understand, this is kind of like a science project to kind of doing a big estimate. And are they going to do 52 weeks of aerial photos?
They do monthly, yeah. So they break it
It
into
says 4 times, I think, here
4 times per month.
per month, so weekly.
So they take an average of the 4 photos for the ET value. Then they spread that over the parcel, and then they say this parcel has this average ET over the month of May, for example. Then they use that, they compare it to our water deliveries in May, and they say, okay, this parcel has ET of 10 acre feet, and there were 7 acre feet delivered, so they must have gotten 3 acre feet from somewhere.
Yeah, I get it. There's so many variables, as you have said, and
Right.
so it'll just be kind of interesting to see. And are there any control sites?
Yeah, and so we will be working with them to calibrate their modeling, because a model's as good as the data you put into it. And so we do have controls like parcels with just avocados with a meter, and it's known that there's no well or no shared water from a well on that parcel. We can use that parcel as a calibration point, and so there are a bunch around the district where we have meter data. We have pretty solid acreage of the crop, and we can look at their estimate. Let's say it says 10 acre feet in that month, and we have 7 acre feet. We'll say you're about 30% off here.
Well, it will be interesting to see if the data comes in those parcels which have no water well or no groundwater extraction meet up with, like that'll be one calibration right
Yeah,
there.
right.
I support it. I just, sort of think of this as an investigation on whether or not it yields good information or not. We still don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this, to give you a little bit larger background, this is a method that is being used in the Central Valley and has been accepted by DWR as a method for measurement. So I think it's got enough weight behind it, but there's always room for improvement.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, could we see the slide on the equation again? Because I'm not quite sure where ground pumping came in. Yeah, that one. So, in simplistic terms, so you've got water provided by the district, and then
And then precipitation.
surface water plus rain
Right.
minus evaporation plus runoff, which we can't measure.
Right.
But they can pick, the evaporation is what's coming off the plants into the environment. And so where is the ground pumping?
Right here. It's on the other side of the equation. So basically, this is what the plant needs. This is what we know has been applied to the parcel.
That's in, right, and the red
So
is
the
out.
difference is the groundwater.
Okay, all right. So, yeah, and the greenhouse is another issue, and then there was that article that I shared with everyone, that actually if someone had a private pump and that was over watering, and we assumed they wouldn't want to do that because electricity costs money, but if they kept putting more and more water into their ground, their crop there, only a certain amount would evaporate anyway, you know.
Only a certain amount is taken up by the plant, the rest
Yeah,
returns.
the rest would, you know, depending on whether it's a confined or not area, might make it back to the groundwater basin. But still, it has its limitations for tracking over pumping or over watering.
Yep.
So but I think it makes sense to look into this. So, but it seems like all the arrows are pointing back to put a digital, I was gonna say a mechanical meter on all the pumps, but a digital meter on all the pumps. And I had another, and you kind of explained well within the confined area how the recharge works, which is very interesting, because once it gets past those roots, if it's in the right kind of earth, you know, I said, well, how's it going to make it? It depends on where the groundwater basin is. Some of them are 80 feet from the surface, or 50, or some are 800. How's it going to make down 800 feet to recharge the groundwater basin if that's where you happen to be? And then you pointed out in the confined areas, it'll get past the roots and just sit there until you said, I guess science has proven this in Carpinteria anyway, if we get 13 inches of rain in a year, then that'll push the stuff that's been stuck down to 800 feet. Maybe not down to the sea level, but the A level.
So what you're talking about is what we call the vadose zone, and that's the space between the aquifer, the permeable layers of the aquifer and the roots, the root zones. And so water, when it percolates past the reach of the roots, it just basically sits there and needs something to drive it the rest of the way into the deeper aquifers. And typically that's rain.
Yeah.
You know, if you get enough rain in a year, it will start driving that water that's stuck there. New water gets stuck as well, so you know it's sort of like a transfer station. It's always usually full, but you can't get to that water until it actually makes it to the aquifer.
And yeah, and then this leads me to when we get the pumping fee in place, how is that going to work through? I would imagine that the district would have to pay its own pumping fee.
Yes.
And then would it charge the district users on their water bill, or would it send a notice to the county to adjust the property taxes?
No, it would. So the water district. This is sticky because I'm sitting here as the water district representative as well as the GSA representative. The water district, let's say they pump 1,000 acre feet in a year. So, and let's say the fee is $100. So they're going to pay $100,000 in that year. That expense has to be covered by revenues, which is collected through the water bill one way or another.
Well, what about our property taxes? We're already, you know, everyone's already paying for the GSA.
Those won't be in place anymore. So,
Oh, I
yeah.
see. Okay. Well, okay, that makes sense as a plan. So, yes, very interesting, and I think it's worth a look-see for sure.
I'll just make one final comment. I think the price is fair too. I think it is unknown. You're absolutely right, Matt. There's a lot to learn, but I think it's worth the price to learn what we have to learn, knowing that we're still pursuing meters after our discussion last week. So, but I'm happy to make a motion to support the project. If you're
Go ahead. Yeah,
sorry, if you have more questions,
I have
go
a
ahead.
question
Sure.
for Bob. Since we're working 12 months behind, because the bills, the property tax assessment will go out July 1st, I believe.
Yeah, we're actually working almost 2 years, just because we don't have, our land use relies on aerial photos, and we take those at a certain time, and then it takes, there's a lead time for us to get it, so it's got to be at least 2 years behind. If we start, getting better data from this method, then I think we could scooch it up a year, but it's still very difficult because of the deadline to collect through the counties is June of each year, so you have to have everything wrapped up and the estimates made by June, and you have to have done your 218 notice and everything, so,
Did you get a lot of phone calls on the letters you send out on the estimated pumpage on all the parcels?
yes.
And, your time is too valuable to really deal with those people, but anyhow.
Well, I will say Danielle is doing the brunt of the work, but yes, thank you.
But also, and the reason I'm asking is because if we're talking about our data from 21 and 22 then, right? Because you're not using 23.
We're using fiscal year '22.
Which is 6/30/22?
Yeah, so it's July 1, '22 to June 31st of '23.
Right, but how much rainfall did we have that year? Did we get 18 inches or we didn't?
It was a little bit drier that year.
Right, so as long as we don't go too dry, because then you got another issue
Yeah,
to do.
and again, remember, so the way that the fee is calculated is we have a budget, an annual budget estimate, and let's say it's $450,000 a year. We then simply divide that up by the total number of acre feet that we've estimated has been pumped. And then we allocate per acre foot cost to whoever's parcel pumped, so it's really a ratio exercise more than it is a total quantity.
Right, but I'm just saying, since we're 2 years behind, this method, within 12 months, we should have pretty accurate information if we get started now.
This method?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but what's going to govern? Is it going to, is our estimates going to govern, or is the transpiration?
Well,
gonna-
we're doing fiscal year '22, and we should have that. They actually are presenting at a conference in June. Our staff is presenting at a conference in June, so we have to have it before June. And it's just really we're not going to use one over the other. We're using them to compare and make sure there's no outliers that seem not to make sense.
Right, but any private pumper, myself included, if they come in and want to appeal, all you can tell them, hey, put in a meter and prove us wrong. Is that
Yeah,
the? approach
well, I
we're
mean,
gonna
we'll
take?
show them the data that we have and say, this is how we calculated the information, this is what it's based on. We also have ET data that gives us very close to the same answer. And, it's the best we can do, and yes, if you'd like to appeal, you can put in a meter and start tracking it through a meter, and as long as it's calibrated. We'll have to develop some rules about the appeal process, which we haven't gotten to yet, but something along those lines, I think, would be appropriate.
Right, because, unless they have a meter, it's still going to take them 12 months to prove to us what their real water use is.
Right.
Okay, so we have a motion.
Second.
Oh, you guys, yeah.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? And then a roll call, please.
Director Holcomb?
Yes.
Director Johnson?
Aye.
Director Roberts?
Aye.
Director Balch is absent. Director Van Wagerden?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0-1.
Then we go on to item number 5B, consider revising the joint, oh, sorry, you're going to skip that?
No, we'll
information?
discuss it. I want to get it out there, so this will be the first hearing.
Okay, so item number 5B, consider revising the joint power authority agreement for the GSA for discussion. Bob?
Yeah, so this has been something that's been on the back burner for a while as we're trying to get through the GSP, and, now that we're through that, we're bringing it back. The JPA, as you recall, it's a joint powers authority. The GSA is made up of a joint powers authority between the Water District and the City of Carpinteria, the County of Santa Barbara, and the County of Ventura. And so in 2020, we, all 4 of the collective agencies got together and agreed to form a joint powers authority, and the agreement that basically forms and is the agreement for that agency is called the Joint Powers Authority Agreement. There are a few problems that we've experienced as we've been, working as the GSA now for a few years that have come up, and I just have, and this is by no means an exhaustive list of examples. It's just some of the examples that are the more obvious ones. I just did a few snippets here, and the agreement itself is in your packet if you want to look at it. But the first item that I think we're going to need to address is supermajority. You can see there it says on 1.21.1, if 5 directors are eligible to vote, meaning, and this is in the context of the board being 5 water district board members and 3 optional directors from each agency if they decide to exercise. None of them have, so we are with a 5 director board. So in our case, a supermajority would mean 3 affirmative votes, which doesn't really make sense. It's a simple majority. So you can't have a supermajority and a simple majority being the same. So that's a first problem. Then it defines, this section 1 is the definition section, and then it defines unanimous in 1.22. It says unanimous vote by the board of directors shall mean one of all directors in attendance and eligible to vote. And so basically, if we had a situation like we have today where you have 4 directors that are in attendance, if all of you vote yes on a matter, then it's considered a unanimous vote, which is fine. That's a good way to do it. But later in another section, section 9.31, it talks about this concept of first hearing and second hearing, and it says a unanimous vote of all directors. So that makes it, that's a little bit less generous, I guess, than the actual definition given in the definition section. So that needs to be resolved. My leaning is just to make this a unanimous vote by the definition given. And then in this section, for example, there's some conflicts where, they talk about when a supermajority vote is needed. So these changes are mainly focused on the voting, rules of voting for the board. So there's a conflict here in another section on whether this particular item of business requires a supermajority. Those are just, like I said, a couple examples. And what I'd hoped to achieve today was get action to start working with legal counsel to start working on this agreement, because we've been talking about it for some time, but we really haven't done the work. And it's going to be a process because we'll have to take this to the other members, and they'll all have to go to their legislative bodies. We'll have to take it to CVWD, and we'll have to approve all the changes and then re-sign the agreement or sign an amendment. So the recommendation was going to be authorize executive director to work with the council to address the issues, but because in a twist of irony, we don't have all 5 directors here, we're going to make it an informational item. This will be the first hearing, and so then we'll bring it back the next meeting, and we won't need a supermajority or a unanimous vote, I should say.
What, can I see the first definition of a supermajority again? Because I think I'm having a glitch here. It didn't make sense. One of all directors is eligible to vote? What does that mean? A unanimous vote? Shall mean a vote of all directors in attendance eligible to vote. It says 1, so I'm thinking 1 director is doing what?
1 vote?
Yeah, one vote? What?
Yeah, I don't, that, again, that's a little bit unclear.
Yeah, that, I would, because I don't even understand what that's supposed to mean.
Yeah, I think we read it a bunch of times and then convinced ourselves that it meant it's all directors that are present eligible to vote. So if there's a missing director, then you can still have a unanimous vote.
Okay, that's not what it means to me. Okay, okay. Well, very good. And while I'm asking, have we heard any feedback or developments from possible participation by the other 3 seats, the optional seats?
No, but this will be a good opportunity to, talk to them, because there is a section in the JPA that talks about 90 days after the GSP has been adopted. We're coming up on that date, so it will be a good
remember that.
opportunity to mention to them, hey, the time is running out. It's not that the door will be closed, but there just will be a different procedure to put a member on the board.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah.
It might mean one vote there. Maybe there's just a word missing.
Yeah.
Little wordsmithing, but I think the one refers to the vote.
One vote. It fixes it, so that's fine.
Okay? We're good?
Yep.
Okay, then we move on to item number 6, Executive Director's Report. There is none. We don't have an item for future agendas, but I hope I'm allowed to do this. Bob, it's my understanding in Ventura County, they had meters on all those wells within 12 months. So if we can have, and we already discussed it, I know you're working on it, but if we can have at least a plan of what the district can do for any private pumpers that are willing to, that want to put in their meters, because most people will be motivated to get it done sooner than later because they're going to pay for what they're really using. And I'm hoping that we can convince most of these private pumpers to use the district's, the ion water system. So what I was hoping, and we talked about it a little bit, but I was hoping if we can show the pumpers to get the $500 from the county, and possibly if the district through the GSA is able to pay for the transmission part of the meters and have those funds available, that needs to be part of our budget then starting on June 1st of this year. And then I think we can prevent a lot of frustration. That's all I'm talking about. So.
Or at least you'll have an update.
Yeah, I mean, we are going to reach out to Ventura's Groundwater Management Agency. They're a lot older than the GSAs, have been around for many years, and battling seawater intrusion at Oxnard. And we are going to reach out to them to find out, because they do have a program in place that's pretty robust. We do have a few people who own property here and who talked about the metering requirements there.
Yeah, it's my understanding it happened really fast in Ventura County, particularly since they're in overdraft. That's another issue. So, but when you're reaching out to Ventura County, and I don't want to open up a can of worms here, but half the valley above Foothill and Casitas, so Matt's parcel and some of mine are in the recharge area. I believe Ventura County might have a water credit for private pumpers that are in the recharge area, and it's only reasonable. And I'm not trying to get Matt and me going here, but
I don't know anything about it.
well, you will. But anyhow, I'm just saying, when you reach out to Ventura County and find out how they're dealing with the recharge credits, because I think we need to resolve it also. But the meters is really, I think if we, I'll say that, stay focused, we can get this done in the next 3-4 months to at least give the private pumpers the option, either do this or do that, and that's fine, and move on. So it is okay. Thank you. So then I want to re-adjourn the meeting of the regular board meeting of the Carpinteria Valley Water District. Let's see, get that going. So we go on to item number 7, new business, 7A. Consider the draft ordinance 24-1, moving the Carpinteria Valley Water District from drought stage 1 to drought stage 0. For information, Bob.
Yeah, so this is something we talked about last year when we moved from stage 2 to stage 1 in March of last year. We wanted to see what the groundwater basin would do and whether or not we would continue to have enough wet weather to offset some of the drought conditions. So at the time, rather than going from stage 2 to stage 0 when we had the wet winter in 2023, we took a slower approach, and so we went to stage 1. So we've been in stage 1 for about a year. And so staff has evaluated it, and on the basis of, 2 consecutive wetter than average years, Lake Kachuma spilling for 2 years in a row, state water allocation being 100% last year, although it's 15% this year, there still is a lot of water in the state water system. And groundwater levels have actually increased between 5 and 30 feet across the basin, so it is looking like there's some recovering going on in the groundwater basin, although not fully pre-drought. It's looking promising. And demands are lower than our baseline, so pretty much all of the reasons why you would have a staged drought in place are no longer issues. And so based on that information, it's staff's recommendation that we start moving forward with the process. To that end, we put in a draft ordinance in the packet. With an ordinance, you're required to post it 10 days prior to adoption. So tonight we'll start the clock, and then at the next available meeting we'll adopt it, or we'll consider it. So with that, the schedule. So tonight's the draft ordinance 24-1 to move the district into stage 0. On the 10th of April, we'll consider adoption of ordinance 24-1. And then it will be effective on the start of the next billing date, which is April 25th. So what that will do is it will remove the drought charges from the bill. So in the April to May bill, there won't be a drought charge on the bill anymore. So just as a point of reference, annual revenues generated from the drought charge is approximately $800,000 a year. So we will see about $800,000 coming off of our revenue stream when we do that. We did plan for that when we modeled the rates a year ago, so it's not going to be too detrimental. So this is just for information. Again, if you have any questions on the draft, happy to answer them or the process.
Sure. Polly, any questions? No, Matt?
Yeah, I support it, makes sense. Some of the common sense, recommendations for even out of drought, makes sense. I support it.
Okay, Bob, I do have a concern that obviously the $800,000, yeah, it's only reasonable that it goes away, but in our last meeting, we did discuss the fact that our water consumption is going down. And I got the sense from you and your team that you think I'll come back. Personally, I think after hearing the economic forecast, I don't think it's coming back. I think there's people with families have left town and they're not coming back. So our water use most likely is not going to come back up again either. So we need to plan for our next budget to make sure.
Yeah, if you recall last 2 weeks ago, I presented some information about updating the model with Raftalis, the baseline model. And in that discussion, we talked about lowering our baseline from 4,200 to 3,800. So that's already included in the upcoming work. We will lower the expected sales.
Okay. Thank you. So then we go on to item number 7B, consider update the rules and regulations for action, Bob.
Yeah, sorry about the small text. This is back from last month. There are 3 items here. Rule 17D is the master meter item, and so the language is in the packet. And essentially, I will point out that Director Balch pointed out that there was a problem with the language in that the 10 units was not covered by any rule, so we fixed that. So it's less than 10 is not allowed to have a master meter, and more than 10 is.
Or 10 or less. What did you do? with
Yeah,
10?
you just did
Which
it
side
again.
is it? Do it again. Which side is the 10? Is it on the?
Less than 10,
Yeah.
or I'm sorry, 10 or less, you're right. That's right.
Thanks, that's it.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. 10 or less is not allowed to have a master meter, and then all that are 11 and above can with staff recommendation. Then the second change, I had mentioned last month that, the cross connection, which is essentially a science of how private water systems get reconnected back into public water systems, and that water flows back into the public water systems, puts the system, the public water system at risk. For example, you could hook up a fire system. That water really just sits there, is very stagnant, and then in the right conditions, if you have a pressure drop in your public system, it might suck that water back into the public system. It can be very dangerous. So there's a whole science behind preventing that, backflow prevention, and that's also referred to as cross connection. That was typically regulated under the Title 17, but there's a new handbook that the state has come out and basically replaced all of the statutory requirements, regulatory requirements in this book. And so we essentially have changed our rules to reflect that. There are some changes that are going to affect customers now that that book has been put together. And so we need to get the rules changed, and then we'll start going through those various services that need to be addressed. And then finally, on Appendix C, the cost of a fire hydrant it just seems like everything is just going up and up and up. And we had a deposit amount, I think it was 3,500 was our original deposit, and so now we're raising it up to 48,000 just to make sure. I'm sorry, 38,000 was our, or 35,000 was our old estimate or deposit, and we're raising it to 48,000. And that again is because all those materials are going up very quickly, cost-wise.
Could I ask what a hydrant guard is?
Hydrant guard is something that we implemented after the debris flows occurred in 2017, 2018. And what they do is they're a check valve that you put between the hydrant and what we call the berry, or the riser pipe. And when it gets knocked off, let's say a car runs into it, instead of 100 miles an hour water coming out of the thing, you get a little stream that just is an indicator that the hydrant's been knocked off. So it basically prevents a lot of water from flowing through your system and out into the street
Oh.
or wherever.
Okay.
In the debris flows, one of the things that Montecito dealt with was lots of hydrants were knocked out and water was just coming out of the system as fast as they could put it in. So it was a way to change our standards that would have an effect that would help us if ever that were to occur here.
Is that for the new hydrants or when they need to be replaced? Or?
Yeah, any new hydrant that we put in, we put a hydrant guard in.
Oh, okay.
So with that,
Oh, I have okay, if we're moving on to another one. I had a question on page 16 on the, page 16. Some is red and some is blue. So this is the old, this hasn't changed, right? Of the packet, page JDU, it starts with, and, wait a minute, yeah. I had a question about the the ADU over 750 square feet. So even if they're attached to one building, if the ADU is over 750 square feet, then it would count as it would need a master meter?
No, so the ADUs and the JADUs are a category of land development that by state law, we can't require new meters, we can't require additional charges. So that's not actually changing. Item E, which starts on page 15, accessory dwelling units. It's
Yeah.
really just it's to talk about what we do with ADUs and JDUs.
Oh, so that hasn't been revised?
No, it has not.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was kind of curious about it. It sounded like if it's ADU is over 750, it'll be reclassified as a master meter,
A multifamily residential,
and that,
yeah,
okay, so it won't have to have another meter, but it will be reclassified.
right. So
And they
so
can have a
it-
sub-meter if they want.
Yeah, so if it's below 750, the state requires us, or won't allow us to charge any more.
Uh-huh.
So someone could build someone has a single-family residential, 3/4 inch meter serving it, and they decide, I'm gonna put an ADU in my backyard. If they keep it below 750 acre feet, or 750 square feet, then,
Even if it's
nothing
a
changes.
shared wall, or whether it's
Doesn't-
freestanding or
Yeah, it
not.
doesn't need to be shared wall. ADU has a very specific, junior ADU and ADU has a very specific definition in the city and the land use agencies. It can be a structure with its own entrance and, kitchen, bathroom, the full thing. But if it's under 750, then we don't change anything other
Hopefully,
than-
it'll help with the housing shortage. And then also the 5,000 square feet non-residential landscapes, that's the same. And that refers to new projects, or does everyone who irrigates outside over,
I'm not sure where you're reading.
oh,
from.
page 16, the next paragraph, irrigation meters?
Oh, yeah, irrigation meters, that hasn't changed, so remember
And that's for new stuff.
remember the model landscape ordinance that, MWELO, as we call it, that we adopted, I don't know, it was probably 2 or 3 years ago, and we actually had someone come and appeal the fact that, they would have to put in a dedicated landscape meter. By area, we calculated, you're doing this much landscaping, that's by this rule and by state
Because that was a
law.
new application.
Right.
Okay. All right, I hope it makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the changes are anywhere it's red, where it's either struck or added. So you can see in item D, business or dwelling units with water service connections. And so this is really the master meter section.
Right, okay. I wasn't sure if F was the same or, so it is the same, and in the red is the change, okay.
Bob, I have a question. So I'm really still struggling with the whole master meter concept. So basically, and again, it's just me, if we don't want to allow master meters, then we got to open up these regulations again. Because now, right now, we're saying anything over 10, you're allowed a master meter.
Well, you're gonna vote on that in a minute. Now, you
Yeah.
can you can tear this apart into pieces and say, that part we don't want to approve, but this part we do, or we want to vote separately. It's up to you how you want to do that, but, if you're wanting to if you want to pass the other two items and then have a separate vote on the master meter, that's fine too.
That would be my preference, but it's not just, there's,
I'm fine just approving it, but I'll do whatever the board wants.
to take out the one about the master meter?
I'm fine approving all of it, but I have no problem taking out a section if the board wants to separate it.
Well, I think we've hashed it around a lot.
Yeah,
I was
that's
under the,
how I feel.
I was under the impression that, with the sub-metering being a requirement, that your concerns were satisfied.
They were, but the more I think about it, I think the district will do a better job maintaining and giving the customer accurate data than a building owner will. So I mean, I know we beat this thing to death already, so
yeah.
I have a real problem with the future. If we want to encourage our customers to be responsible, then you got to give them good information. And to me, a master meter with sub-meters that might work, might not work, to me, that doesn't work for me. That's all. So, but again,
When we're crippled by not having a full board also, so I don't know if that,
Up for it, I think I don't disagree with you at all on the case, but I just think we've gone over this and over this and over this, so I don't know. I'm fine delaying this one piece, if there's something that you want to, if you want to talk to Case and see if there's something else that we can do, but I'm fine for all of it, or can
I
take
think we've talked about it enough, and the staff has pretty much uncovered every stone at this point. So I prefer to have a vote, and if we want to delay the vote till all board members are here, that's fine as well. I'd like to get the other two items approved.
I'll move to approve the other two items and delay the vote on the master meters until we have a
I'll
full,
second
till the April 10th meeting.
I agree. I'll second.
okay, thank you. So we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Oh, yeah, I would be inclined to approve the whole thing, but just because if it, the master meter haven't been heavy users of water so far. And the major issue is maybe landlord abuse or middleman or charging the individual units too much. And, but, oh,
Well, if you'd like
Go
to,
on.
I'll withdraw my motion. You can make a
You
motion
want
then.
to make a motion?
I think you want to hear what Casey has to say too. I'm not so sure that he supports master meters.
He did vote no on to move forward with
He did
the
vote.
analysis, yeah.
You did vote no. Last meeting.
okay, well, then I'll go along with the first motion to allow,
Okay, so, well.
We already have a
moved
motion and a
first,
second on the two.
And I second, and so.
okay, now we
so we're gonna
vote.
wait- So we're gonna wait for Casey
Yeah,
for the,
Okay.
for the master meter piece, even if he votes no again. Okay. I'm fine with that.
Is that clear?
It's clear.
So we got a motion and a second on the two items, leaving out the master meters. Then roll call, please.
Director Holcomb?
Yes.
Director Johnson?
aye.
Director Roberts?
Aye.
Director Balch is absent. Director Van Wieren.
Yes.
Motion carries 401.
Then we got item number 7C. Consider financially supporting Maven's Notebook Water News Blog for action, Bob.
Yeah, so this is something that we participated in a couple of years ago, and then we did it for the board approved it for 1 year, $20 a month. I believe it was in 2022. And Director Johnson reminded staff that this was something that she was interested in continuing, so we put it on the agenda. This is in your packet, but, just kind of a reminder, Maven's Notebook is a daily digest. It's an online news aggregator. Talks about things like water conditions. There's a blog roundup that talks about more recent stuff that's happening, science and news reports. News worth noting. They do also a lot of aggregation of DWR press releases. So it's a pretty good resource for water purveyors and folks who are in this line of business.
So the question is just $20 a month?
Yes.
I move to support it.
You've been happy with it, right? I remember when we did this.
Yeah, I'm
Totally supportive.
very appreciative, and also they publish state data that the state decided to stop publishing, which is way over my head, but it's something that staff would maybe be able to use. And it maybe, I would propose that maybe we either approve it for more than 1 year or approve it for an automatic revote at some point. What are your views on and then automatically bring it up for a vote again after a year?
We could do that.
And this is, the directors all have access to this, or is that everybody?
Yeah, all public has access. This is simply just to make sure that
Oh, I
she
see.
doesn't go out of business and.
I see. It's like
leave a
making a
void.
donation to the News Hawk or Ed Hat
Yeah.
to keep them.
So why not extend it for 3 years? I mean, why only give her 1 year? I mean, if you want her to be around, then
I'm good, I'm not about 3, everything's changing so fast, but I'm good for 2. Would you rather, would 2 be helpful?
It's easy for us to bring it back if you're comfortable with a year. If you're not, then we can.
Let's make it 2.
I'll amend my motion to support it for 2 years.
I second mine.
okay, we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Director Holcomb, Director Johnson,
Aye.
Director Roberts.
Aye.
Director Balch is absent. Director Van Wingerden.
Yes.
Motion carries 401. And I just want to clarify for the record that $20 a month for 2 years.
Correct.
Okay.
Item number 8, director reports, none. Okay.
I'm just trying to,
Shut up. No.
trying to turn it off.
Sorry. Item number 9, general manager report, none. Closed session, none. Consider dates and items for the agenda for the Carpinteria Valley Water District Board meeting of March 27, 2024 at 5:30 PM. Carp- A meter update?
The cap project, yeah. The meter update.
What's the meter up?
Vote.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
the master meter.
No, just to have
Sorry.
an update on what the findings have been with the meter, with our meter direction, in terms
Sorry.
of talking to Ventura, you know,
That's,
Oh,
yeah,
oh,
that's
oh,
on the
oh,
G,
oh,
no,
the
we
GSA,
we
yeah.
got 2, you know, but I agree with you, Polly. No, we need both. We need, for the GSA, we're already gonna do that, but we're gonna bring back the whole master meter,
Yep.
journey, so, thank you there.
And we may not have enough business on the 27th, and I know Director Roberts is going to be out, so we may skip to April 10th. Unless there's something pressing. We'll let you know.
Yeah,
On vacation anytime, if it helps with a meeting cancellation.
I would like to make one suggestion for some upcoming meeting before, well, as we get into summer, is an updated report on the groundwater level. We note in our drought back to 0 that they are recharging, but nice to have an
Yeah,
updated
so we
report on
will,
that.
it will be part of the GSA, but we will have a report on the annual report, which is being completed now and will have to be submitted to DWR by April 1st. But after the report's been completed, we'll have GSA come and do kind of a summary of what the findings were of the report, and that includes water levels.
So that would be a GSA item, or,
Yeah, it would be a GSA item.
that makes sense. Okay, all right, good.
Okay, so then, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
You.